Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Regressive Soapbox. Here comes Corbyn. Here comes Jeremy Corbyn. So, I like British politics. Love it, actually. And I'm not immersed in the country itself, so, I kind of watch it from afar. I love Corbyn. I think Corbyn is fucking awesome. There are certain policies that I can't necessarily go. I think he's a little bit further to the left on some of the stuff than I am. But I like the guy. I like the guy. Now, he was given no chance to win. You've had people just dismissing him completely acting as if this man has no chance. He was down by like 20 points. Some ridiculous amount. So much so that Theresa May wouldn't even debate the guy. Now, she wouldn't debate him because she looked at it as, well, I'm ahead. I don't need to debate. Ultimately, I could just maintain my lead. It's like if you're playing chess, you have a piece up. Well, you just trade down. You don't need dramatics. You don't need anything that could shake up the position. Well, in her case, she's like, well, I don't have to have the debate. We have these conversations every week. No, you're being a coward. You don't want to have the debate because you know you would get your ass handed to you in that debate. That's the reality of the situation. This is based on politics and based on what she thinks she's going to gain versus lose. If Theresa May honestly thought she could gain something from that debate, she would have that debate in a moment. She would have it in a moment. Here's the catch, though. Corbyn is only down by 3 points. Corbyn has made up that lead. So this is Politico. Under Corbyn's stewardship, Labour has seen the biggest increase in poll ratings for one of the two main parties in any general election campaign in history, jumping from less than 30% to almost 40%, according to some of the pollsters who assume a large turnout among young voters. If it transpires in the ballot box, it will be the biggest increase that any of the two parties has managed to achieve in an election, the Professor John Curtis, British preeminent pollster. Though Labour started from a low base with less than a week to go, Corbyn is within touching distance of depriving May a majority in the House of Commons, throwing British politics and the Brexit negotiations into chaos. They dismissed them. They completely dismissed them. And it's very possible he is in spitting distance of getting in number 10. Get him, Corbyn. Get him. I keep saying we're coming. We don't necessarily have to be in the United States. And look at it this way. I made this argument, I think it was like a year ago, making this case that Corbyn was going to be prime minister. The guy who I was talking to thought I was completely nuts, thought I was completely crazy. And I said, no. There's a trend that's not just in the United States, it's going around the world. You have this case where look, in Europe, there's a weird phenomena that went on with austerity. The banks get in trouble. The banks get in trouble due to, the bad, shady business that they're engaged in. Now, the countries bail those banks out. Now, in bailing those banks out in Europe, and I'm talking about Europe, they then began to impose austerity on the population itself. Now, in proposing austerity on the population, essentially it contracted those particular economies, and it put stress on each individual in those particular cultures. Meaning the things that they used to get from their particular countries, well, those countries clawed back some of those services. But understand the impetus to doing this. It wasn't those people's fault that those countries got in trouble. It wasn't those people's fault. So ultimately, the debt and everything else that those people had to pay, the public itself had to bear the burden of the debt that somebody else caused. Now, you can understand that if you had a population where you're putting pressure on that population, you're pulling back services, that population believe you're being unfairly treated. You can understand how that population would want something different. And the typical shill, the typical corporatist, or the typical centrist that gets in those offices, they've realized that those people, for the most part, have led them astray. And not just led them astray, those were the people who imposed austerity in the first place, while at the same token bailing those banks out. You can see the problem. I mean, ultimately, you're putting a society in stress. And in the same way the United States is a society in stress, I'd argue all of this is a basic of the capitalistic model. But let's take that to the side for the moment. Let's just go with this idea of stress. People are going to look for a solution. They're going to look for change. Now, in Britain's case, you have all of these young people who want something different, in the same way you had all these young people in the United States who wanted something different. They went for Sanders at like 70, 80%, just these ridiculous numbers. It's very possible that Corbyn is going to get the same. There's a pattern here. This is not random. Like, people were searching for something different, and these young people have a very clear idea that they want their world to be different. They want their world to be different. They want their lives to be easier. They believe that they themselves can come together and make some decisions on what they themselves provide for themselves, meaning as a government. What are the things that you yourself want to provide for yourself? How do you want to spend the resources of this particular nation? And do you want those resources used to your betterment? Or do you want those resources to go to corporate interests? That is the question that's up for debate in regards to Britain. If Corbyn wins this, that is an amazing sea change. That is an amazing sea change. May did this election because she full well believed that she was going to win. She thought Labour was in shambles. They tried to topple all those neo-libs that was in the Labour Party under Tony Blair. That sniveling criminal should be locked up at this point. That war criminal damaged that party, decimated that party. The Conservative government was able to take over after mismanagement by Tony Blair, particularly after taking that country into that war. Corbyn is picking up the pieces. Now, picking up the pieces in the same way you had people in the Democratic Party fighting Sanders' intentions, was fighting his goals in that sense. Well, the same thing happened in Labour. You had people trying to topple Corbyn. Not only did they fail at toppling Corbyn, Corbyn ended up with more of the vote in that particular vote, meaning the second vote that they had in regards to choosing who was going to be the leader of Labour. He won that more than he won the first vote. It was almost as if they put an emphasis on, no, Corbyn. We want Corbyn. We want Corbyn. Now, fingers crossed, there's no way to know. It's 3 points. If those young people turn out the way that they're thinking they're going to turn out, there will be a new day in Britain. There will be a new day in Britain. This will be amazing news. Now, the question becomes, what's going to happen? Up to this point, they thought that Jeremy Corbyn was completely illegitimate. That guy could never be prime minister. That guy could never be Labour leader. That guy is within 3 points of being prime minister of Britain. So that's what you can do with your whole, that will never happen. Yes, it's happening. It's happening. And if this trend continues where he's gaining on her in this way, Jeremy Corbyn could be the next prime minister of Britain. Personally, I think that's amazing. I think that's amazing. I don't have any necessarily hard feelings against Theresa May. Theresa May is a conservative, and ultimately her goals are against mine. She gets up there at the dispatch box and does the same thing that Cameron did. She would just lie. She would obfuscate. It's like, for the most part, or they would say, well, Labour did the same thing. So you have these situations where they say, well, you did this and you did this, almost like both sides being hypocrites. The problem is, Jeremy Corbyn is not the typical Labour member. At the very least, he's not a neo-lib. Those attacks, in a sense, don't work on Corbyn. The attacks that she used on Corbyn are kind of disgusting, and those were the attacks that Cameron was using. I'm calling it disgusting, but the attacks are, I guess they're fair, but it's the same tactic of using fear. And the same way the Democratic Party was saying Trump was the goddamn apocalypse, you cannot let this man in the office. That's some of the argument they're making for Corbyn, but they're using it from a left-wing perspective, saying Corbyn is going to hurt businesses, and Corbyn is going to hurt our economy, and because he's going to hurt our economy, you're not going to be able to have the national health system and all these other things. That's the attack that they use against Corbyn. 3 points. He's 3 points away. Meaning that attack is not, it's not cutting it. I mean, people are seeing through it for the most part. This is a fear campaign. The question is this fear campaign going to be enough to win? He's only 3 points away. He's only 3 points away. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. That would be amazing if he wins this. That would be absolutely amazing. Yeah, fingers crossed. I'll keep an eye on it. Corbyn is awesome. He just had an interview with Paxman. Now, Paxman is, he's an interesting cat. He comes across as, look, Brits have this thing. Look, I love Brits. I've said it before. They have this arrogance thing down to a science. I don't necessarily think he's trying to do it on purpose, but he has this thing of sitting back, kind of like looking down at you as he's having a conversation with you. It comes across as this authority of sorts. Corbyn did amazing in that interview. He did amazing in that interview. And I've seen Paxman dismantle Theresa May. I've seen him dismantle Cameron. Miserably dismantle Cameron. He asked Cameron, how many food courts was there when you took office? And how many, not food courts, it's like food stands. How many places where people needed to get food, they couldn't afford it when you took office versus how many are there now? He's hitting at something very specific. He's saying, regardless of the things that you say, regardless of the way you try to obfuscate, the reality on the ground is the policies that you're putting in place is hurting Brits. You're hurting Brits. The policies that Corbyn will put in place will be towards the human. They will be more humanist. They won't be necessarily towards the corporation. They will be towards helping the individual in that particular society. I would make the argument that Corbyn is the best choice. So they're going to use the same arguments against Sanders that they would use against Corbyn. That's what I'm saying. I don't necessarily think those attacks work. The people want something different. They're sick of this order of things. That's not just in the United States. That's also in Britain. If you're looking for change, Corbyn is your guy. Corbyn is your guy. All right, guys. If you enjoyed the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and you can always support the work through Patreon. Thank you.